Okay, we're going to look at chapter 3 of the Screwtape Letters. And in this chapter, they find out that the patient has a very bad relationship with his mother. Therefore, Screwtape tells Wormwood to take full advantage of this fact. He tells him to make sure that he stays annoyed with his mother all the time, that he should point out all the things that annoys him about his mother all the time and keep that fresh in his mind. Then he tells him a few methods of how he should do this. Screwtape tells him to keep the patient's eyes off the most elementary duties by directing it to the most advanced and spiritual ones. Make him neglect and disdain the simple and obvious tasks. What Screwtape is saying is that make sure this man is trying to do the most advanced spiritual tasks, to be very spiritual, to be hyper spiritual. So to focus on things like praying for hours and reading and studying scripture in a deep way, but to forget completely about the easy tasks and the minimal tasks, to forget about the elementary duties of loving the people around him. And this is exactly what the Pharisees were like. The Pharisees were focused on the hyper spiritual tasks, or so they thought it was, and by doing so, they forgot about doing the simple things that God commands. Matthew 23:23, Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of the spices, the mint, the dill, and the cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the later without neglecting the former. So Screwtape is telling his nephew, have him focus on the hyper-spiritual things, or at least what he would consider hyper-spiritual things, and have him forget about basic Christianity, to love your neighbor as yourself. The second thing he tells his nephew to do is have him practice self-examination without ever discovering any of those facts about himself, which are perfectly clear to anyone who has lived in the same house or worked with him. So have him practice self-examination without him ever understanding anything about himself. And this is extremely valuable, he says. And what is perfectly clear to others of what is wrong with this patient, don't let him see these things. Don't let him understand all the things that he does to annoy the people around him. Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? And Screwtape is saying, do not let this patient understand his own heart. It's already hard for us to understand our own heart, but Satan certainly does not want us to understand our heart and to actually be able to practice self-examination and see the things that we do wrong. This is why we need to pray and ask God that He will help us to understand our hearts, because no one truly understands their own hearts. Screwtape goes on and says he will most likely pray for his mother, so we must work on focusing his attention on the state of her soul and not on her physical needs, such as her sickness, such as rheumatisms. We must keep him focused on her sins and downfalls and how much she needs God. You must try to make him believe that all the things that irritate him are sins. In this way, you can keep rubbing the wounds even sorer, even when he prays. This will keep him from praying for her real needs for salvation. So basically he's telling him, have him pray for her, but for all her bad habits. And focus on the fact that she really needs God. She's really lost. And do not let him to pray for her physical needs, the things that would actually help her to move closer to God. The things that actually involve love. The loving thing would be to pray for her problems, her physical problems as well as her spiritual problems. But here you should focus only on the negative things about her and don't have him pray for the positive things. Ephesians 4:32, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ God forgave you. Don't let him pray with compassion about his mother, but may his prayers be a rubbing of the wounds of his mother and a putting down of his mother, of her spiritual state, and of thinking of what a horrible person she is and how much she needs God in that way. if you can make him label his mother in an ungracious way, and even in an imaginary way, label her something that she is not, all the better. Make him remember the sharp-tongued old lady at the breakfast table instead of the sinner needing God's forgiveness and help. It is possible by doing this that impassionate prayers can be turned to insulting the real person, even when talking about a wife or a son. So, again, focus his attention on all the bad things she does and give her a label, the sharp-tongued old lady or the lazy old man. And if he prays for her or him in that way, this is a real benefit to you because it's a prayer that is lacking in love. He then goes on and says, make sure that your patient notices the annoying look, the lift of her eye, the way of speech of his mother that annoys him. Let him assume that she knows it annoys him and that she is doing it on purpose. This, of course, is an immense improbability. Never let him suspect that he has such tones and looks that annoy her. So make him focus on all the bad things or the things that annoy him about her, and let him think that she does it on purpose, which he says is probably unlikely that she does. And definitely do not allow him to think that he also does these annoying things that annoy his mother. Matthew 7:5 tells us, you hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And Satan does not want us to look into our own eye before we try and help others with a speck in theirs. And this is what Wormwood is told to do. Make him notice the speck of dust in his mother's eye and never allow him to notice the plank that is in his. Screwtape further says, among family members, hatred is usually expressed by saying things that are harmless, but in such a tone of voice and such a moment that they are like a blow in the face. You must make your patient demand that others take his statements at face value and judge simply on the actual words, while at the same time judging all his mother's utterances with the fullest and most oversensitive interpretation of the tone and context. If you do this, they can leave a quarrel convinced that they are quite innocent. You know the kind of thing. I simply ask her what time dinner will be, and she flies into a temper. He's saying, make sure he judges her in the way that he would not judge himself. Make sure that he thinks that he is completely innocent and only focuses on her problems and what she says and the tone in which she says it. Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Satan wants to try to focus our attention on all the bad things that others would do and not on what we would do. And the Bible tells us we should not focus on these things. We should focus on what is good, what is pure, what is admirable in others.